what a treat of an episode we have for everyone today. We just had the opportunity to interview Bernice Doan, mother of Shane Doan, NHL All-Star, 22-year career, captain of Team Canada, 2006 Winter Olympian, King Clancy Award winner, works for the Toronto Maple Leafs now, but just a huge man of character. And we got to unpack a little bit what it would look like in the Doan household growing up. I just thought, as a hockey mom, to come on and talk about some of the things that she did or her husband Bernie did to develop character at a young age and to continue to stay close to Shane and her other children throughout their lives and their careers. Really great episode, and I hope you enjoyed part one.
I really enjoyed all the backstory, like the history of raising kids at a ranch, Circle K Ranch in Alberta, and just the impact that had on their own kids. Because we talk about Shane so much, but then you talk about their daughter Leanne, who played at the UFC, was their all-time leading scorer, and played overseas, and then their youngest son Brooks, who was a tremendous athlete in his own right, but chose a different path and has taken the same values and lessons into owning his own business and leading his own children. So just a very extremely rich interview, and loved it. It was so much fun.
Yeah, so I think whether you're a hockey mom and can relate directly with Bernice and her role, or whether you're just a sports parent or a parent at all, I just think there was so much that Bernice could talk and that you're going to learn from Bernice. Some of those concerns on their first time away from home, feeling like you're holding your child back for something lesser, chores. There is a lot today, and I'm just thrilled for everyone to get the opportunity to learn from Bernice Doan.
I know for a fact I did, and just made me think about my own relationship with my own kids and how I'm building into them and just enjoying them and being intentional in those areas. And it's well worth your time. Great interview, and again, so rich.
This special interview is released over 2 episodes. I think I want to start with a little bit of your background and everything like that, and who you are and Bernie and where you guys live and kids and all that kind of fun stuff before we get into kind of the deep on the hockey mom and everything else like that. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
I grew up in a little town called Veteran. Lived there till I lived on a farm. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and they remind me consistently that I take that advantage of that particular role that I have of being the oldest. Bernie is the youngest of 6. He reminds me also that I take advantage of that. He doesn't have to make any decisions, he said, because I do. We've been married for, last June, we were married for 50 years, which really blows me away, because your guest, John O'Sullivan, made a comment that I wrote down: the days are long and the years are short. And when life is moving along and going well, that's very true. So we have 3 children. Our children range in age from 48 to 37, even though there's only 3 of them. We have 11 grandchildren. They range in age from 26 to 7. So we have a variety there. We moved to Circle Square Ranch about 3 or 4 years after we got married. And we lived on the property until about 10 years ago. Now we live across the road in a little house that Bernie grew up in. And
okay. Wow.
So it's we have the joy of having these 3 children, wonderful spouses for them, and grandchildren that we adore and have fun with still. Bernie played a lot of hockey. I came from a hockey family. My dad played hockey, was the captain.
Right, and your maiden name was L or B, right? And I know there's some hockey, like as you mentioned, there's a hockey line there in your family as well. And I want to say that even relates you to Carey Price. I mean, there's a lot of hockey blood in your bloodline, right? Yeah,
there is. Yes.
Yeah, and I knew, I did know about Bernie's background a bit. I mean, Bernie was a very good hockey player, and obviously, you guys, were married and decided to take on a Circle Square Ranch and move there. So that was 53 years ago that you moved there. And but raised a beautiful family at the ranch. And not only that, I think there's a bit of a stream that runs through the Grit and Growth podcast from people that we have on, and just their passions in life and their commitment to raising the next generation of leaders. And we're thrilled to have you join us, Bernice, because you've done that. There's a lot that we want to dig into with you. I mean, you've done that with your children, and at the same time, you and Bernie as a pair have done that with thousands of kids. Like, I wouldn't even know how many generations and kids and families that you have invested in and impacted over the years at Circle Square Ranch. Maybe just a quick synopsis. What is Circle Square Ranch for those that don't know?
Circle Square Ranch is a non-denominational, interdenominational, whichever, Christian summer camp, but is also a retreat center that runs year-round. It started in 1978. When we moved here, there was a hole in the ground, no road to get into it. One of the advantages that we had was that Gary Lefebvre, who was an excellent football player and had come to know the Lord, became the first director, and he had quite a few contacts. Gary was a very charismatic. I don't mean that religiously. I mean his personality. People were attracted to him, and he and his family pretty much gave up everything and moved to Circle Square and started it. And they asked Bernie if he would come and be the builder. And if you came on the property, we're blessed. It has a beautiful falls fronts of towns. It now has, you, Justin, probably got to be one of the first groups that really got to use the new facility, the pathway. We used to have what was called Teepee Village. In the summertime now, and in the past, we've averaged around 11 to 1,200 children that come, and about 150 different staff, most of which are teenagers. And I think they're the cream of the crop, the teenagers that come. You were saying generation. We have had a lady who used to work at the ranch in the summer, came as help with the cook, and her boys came. They were very good friends with Shane. They grew up with him. They're big men, and they were just really great guys. The mother came, the boys came, then the boys' children came, and they married other girls that came. So we're on about the fourth generation of those guys, and there's families like that. So it's been the greatest blessing that we were given as far as being able to minister in something like that. And our kids grew up there. They loved it. They told us we couldn't move away until they graduated from high school, and all three of them grew up there.
So just to, give some background to what you had said, Bernice, about the pathways. We did at Prairie Hockey Academy. We've had the opportunity to spend a few of our fall seasons up there as a bit of a team retreat, and stayed in the pathways. And like you said, they were brand new the first time we stayed in them. They're beautiful, kind of like dorm facilities, but connected to the cafeteria, which is, for any mother listening, knows that that's close to any young athlete's heart, is the cafeteria. So it was an incredible stay and a beautiful facility. We've enjoyed our time there, and I have a really great photo in front of the big fireplace inside of the cafeteria, or just with Bernie and I, and that I'll always remember from our first trip there. So 55,000 is my rough math on the amount of kids that have come through since you've been running that facility, and about 7,500 staff and top-notch teenagers. That's a incredible impact. You mentioned briefly you have three children. A lot of people on our podcast are sports fans. In fact, we talk a lot about just Grit and Growth podcast being about developing or pursuing excellence in sport and in life. And of course, we're connected to Prairie Hockey Academy with myself as one of the co-hosts, and then with Shane as men's basketball coach at Briarcrest. And we have listeners from all those, basketball and hockey, but lots of different sports. So I know there's going to be a lot of people that want to hear from Bernice Doan as the hockey mom of Shane Doan, of course, but you have two other children as well. And I know your one daughter was an exceptional basketball player and had an opportunity to play professional also. And so, I'm not sure if your other son, who I think was probably the largest of your three children, I think he's a big man, and I don't know if he played professional, but it was a avid athlete as well. Tell us about your daughter a little bit and her pursuit of sports and athletics as well.
Okay, Leanne is she's now a teacher and a coach. She coaches her own children, but um, ironically, Halkirk had a very little school, and people always laughed. You know, you don't ever. We had a cement floor in our gym, but she was a basketball player. She went on to play at the U of C. She's actually the all-time leading scorer still for the U of C. And from there, she thankfully got married first. Her husband went with her to France. She played basketball in France for 3 years professionally. She's played for Team Canada, and they fell short by like 3 points of going to the Olympics a few years ago with Canada, which was sad. But hey, in
Yeah.
sports, you win and you lose. So
Bernice, the thing I'm curious about, and so you talk about the how great your staff are in the summer and everything, and so for your kids growing up um, at a ranch, and probably very different than the normal high school younger kid's experience. Um, what was it like for them growing up in that environment, like to learn to serve? I'm guessing it was all hands on deck, and that they might have been able to experience some different things than the normal teenager kid might experience growing up. So I'm curious how the environment that they grew up in played a role in shaping who they became as adults.
I would say all three of them that it's probably the most significant part of their development as teenagers and into adults. Two of the things that are really one very obvious one. We play, and Justin would maybe attest to some of this. We play pretty rough games. Circle Square Ranch Halkirk is known for kind of wild games that have no technology. It's purely you run, you jump, you wrestle, which is their favorite thing to do is wrestling. One of the things that was probably the greatest blessing for us as parents, our children would play these wild games and have so much fun and do all these things with the same young people who treated them with great respect as younger children when they were younger. And then we'd go to campfire and they'd be the same ones that would be leading the singing or standing up and giving a testimony of the faithfulness of God in their lives. And I would say that probably affected our children more than anything else, and would be something that has contributed to them, the character that they've grown up with, the way that they are as people, had a huge part. But I will say we never thought about the fact that we lived at a camp. It was home, and that's where we lived. And so we've asked, are we normal? Like, are we like everyone else? Because we weren't tree huggers, in that camping was this kumbaya type of a. It was very exciting, and lots of hard work. They we would tell them when they were at working, don't tell anybody how old you are, and you'll be fine because we need you to be there. If you didn't tell the kids you were only 14, then they wouldn't know that you were only 14. So those were really special days. And now their children have come back and worked at the ranch also. So
And so there's again instilling a work ethic in your children is what I'm hearing is important. But even over and above that, they were just in such a unique environment that
mhm.
they were able to be influenced and raised by some of the camp counselors and others and workers and things that came there, that there was just multiple hands on in their character development
Yeah,
that was being reinforced outside of just your guys's four walls in your home.
yeah. That's a huge part of it. The whole statement, everybody knows it takes a village to raise a child. Um, I tell people that, think about going to work at a camp or something. Try it. If you couldn't raise your children in a better atmosphere,
Mhm.
um, because it confirms what you're saying as a parent. You see it acted out. Um, I had a lady one time tell me she didn't think she wanted her children to be not a part of any religious activities. And so I called her, and it was on her application. I called her and I said, I'm sorry. I said, I don't think your children, as much as we want them to come, I don't think that they should come to this camp if that's how you feel. And she said, well, do you go to church all day long? And I said, no, but we teach our staff from the principles of the Bible to treat your children with respect. They won't be yelled at. They will be told how to act and all these different things, but they'll be taught how to act from the principles of the Bible. So she sent her children, and her kids cried when they left because they enjoyed it so much. And her boyfriend ended up sending his children, and that's how our children grew up, and they saw that confirmed in the not just the teenagers, but in our, the main staff are still friends of theirs to this day. So,
Bernice, I'm really curious about how old was Shane when he moved away for hockey? Was his first time moving away to Kamloops, or did he play AAA somewhere? Or
Kamloops wanted him to go and play AAA in Red Deer. He would have been 14 years old, and he didn't want to go. I mean, one of the disadvantages of loving where you live so much is you don't want to leave home. But so he actually played in Killam and just played AA hockey. But when he got there, they allowed him to play junior B hockey also. And his dad was the coach, and they teased him a lot because he had to wear a cage and all that kind of stuff. So he didn't go away till the next year. He was 15 when he left home in August. He turned 16 in October, and it was very hard.
And he went straight to Kamloops at that point, I think, correct?
He went straight to Kamloops, and we gave him $100 check to open a bank account. He moved into a billet's house, and we said we'd be back. It was August. We said we'd be back in October. We ended up going back in September because all of us were missing each other a lot.
well, and just with that, and again, I'm curious for a few reasons. So we have a number of student athletes here at Prairie Hockey in Caronport who have left home at that young age. And it's very common in the hockey world. My youngest is he's all in on basketball, loves basketball, and he's even talked about leaving home already because basketball, all the sports, you can leave home early for all sorts of programs now. The world's changed, sporting world's changed, and for his mother and I, that's a little tough to swallow, just processing all of that. And so, I'm curious, some of the challenges you and your family faced, even maybe some of the challenges that Shane faced moving away for the first time, and how you and how you guys navigated those challenges and worked through those and grew through those. Just to speak to the experience that, because there's probably some parents listening to this that are hockey parents, or kids have gone away and they're feeling a little bit of angst, or they're trying to make that decision. Do we send our kids away? And yeah, just want to know your experience and what advice you would give to those parents wrestling with that decision right now.
Well, it was very hard. One of the piece of advice I would say is save some money so you can make a lot of long road trips to go see them, because that's probably the hardest. Missing them, and one of the things that maybe people don't think about, their brothers and sisters. Shane's youngest brother was only 4 when he left home.
Wow.
And so it was very hard. And every time we would go, and it would be so exciting to see them, we'd cry, all the way home. We had to drive 1,000 kilometers to get to Kamloops. And so there was a lot of prayer that went into, because we had, you're familiar with Darcy Tucker. He actually went to Red Deer and played hockey the year before Shane. He's a year or two older than Shane. And so at first it seemed like, well, AAA maybe, but he'd have had to go to Red Deer to school, and it was too far for us to have him go back and forth. Because we made the decision for him to stay home, we spent probably 5 out of 7 nights, some weeks, driving to Killam. Bernie was the coach for midget, and I drove him to the junior B games, which was kind of funny because a lot of them were 20 years old and they could go to the bar, and his mom had to drive him. So it was a little bit humbling for him to, to be part of that. But he did win the scoring race in that year
Wow.
for the junior Bs, which was kind of funny. But the actual leaving, one of the things we did, we actually got our families involved, like our parents and stuff like that, and we prayed and we did have peace finally when he left home. They were the Kamloops organization, I can't say enough about it. Bernie was actually very leery about Shane going to play junior hockey because he played junior hockey in the late 60s and early 70s. And it was some pretty rough, and my brothers did too. And they would tell you they didn't learn things that really helped them when they got older. Thankfully, they all saw the error of their ways but so he was leery about that. But and I would say this maybe for parents, one of the things that we were told, we'll get him into church. They were trying to appease what they thought of us as a religious family. And Bernie made a comment to Mr. Brown, Bob Brown, who was an amazing man for that organization, and said his faith it has to be his. You can't do it and we can't do it. It has to be his decision to follow the principles that he's been taught. Mm-hmm. And that was a big thing for Shane to see also. But for us as a family to know, God was with him. We have a verse that there's a lot of verses, but everybody knows Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you, and it seemed like that was the plan that God had for Shane's life, and he went away. Our other kids didn't have to go away till after high school, so it was good. I would recommend going to see them lots if you can. That was probably our whenever we could. We would get in the car on Thursday night and we'd drive 1,000 kilometers so we could watch him play. Usually, if he were playing at home, then we would stay as long as we could on Sunday, get back in the car and drive all the way home. And one time we even dropped off our daughter at my aunt. She had a shower and we took her to high school that morning. So we could spend as much time with them as possible.
Yeah. And I can just hear, I'm just here Bernie right now. I'm probably talking about Proverbs 22:6 and just training up a child in the way he should go. And even when he is old, he will not depart from it. And just trusting that, through you guys' prayer and through what you've invested in the community around it. Because I know there's lots of concerns and there's fears that we face as parents, and parents that are sending their son or daughter away at a young age, even at an older age, even the first year university, if it's the first time your daughter's leaving, it's you still experience all those. Yeah. I think, Bernice, one of the exciting parts for me was just going, and I said this to Shane and Andy before the podcast this week. I just said, I look at this as almost us hosting a mini, hockey moms conference. and Bernice is our keynote speaker, because I think there's a lot of parents, but hockey moms in particular, that would be like, wow, some of the kids that Bernice and Bernie have raised, and Shane in particular, I'd love my son to be like that, to be spoken to in that regard, or about in that regard, to be a King Clancy Award winner someday, as the leadership award winner of the NHL and different things. And so that's some of the questions we have. And I had a couple moms, when I told them that you were going to be on the podcast, sent me some questions. And one was, even a little bit to the regard that you just spoke about, how you guys made a choice to not send Shane to that midget AAA at a younger age, but keep him. Some people probably thought you were crazy. They thought you were maybe robbing him of an opportunity, or holding him back, or ruining his career potential. And I think as parents, how do we be okay with going with what is perceived as the lesser? Now, it worked out for Shane in regards to, at least in the world's view of making the National Hockey League. But in that moment, how are we okay with what's being perceived as the lesser?
That's probably one of the hardest decisions for people. And we do have parents call us. And one of the things that we tell a lot of parents that speak to us if your child is good enough, and I don't even know how to say good enough. If they have the gifting, if they have the properties, if they have the personality, someone will find them and they will help you if they really want to see that child as a part of a professional program, especially. Shane never got to go to hockey schools when he was, a kid because they're all in the summertime.
He was running camp.
We were running camp,
Yeah.
and we needed him at the barn. So, but I think there's so much pressure on kids and on parents now to start right from when they're like little to have this be all encompassing and to maybe focus more on just the one sport that you're Stu McGregor, who was he was a scout and a lot of other things with Kamloops. He said, don't let Shane play spring hockey. Have him, he played baseball and he did every kind of sport and he loves horses and all those kind of things. And I think for parents to ask, for us, we are a family of faith. So we have in our opinion, we have an advantage because we have somebody to talk to and get some answers from. And we were both, the scripture is such a huge part of our lives that we had confidence that God would look after him. They also put him in a really great billet place. And so I would suggest that if at all for parents, really look into where they're going. You have an advantage, Shane, in that, looking at the children coming to a prairie, to the academy, that's huge because they're going to have like-minded people and people who care about them. That's not always so in the real world, as people would call it. But Shane had a really good billet. In fact, she was a lady who was a widow, and he lived with a couple of other hockey players. And those are things that are maybe specifics, but I would say don't feel the pressure to send them away too soon. We have lots of people that thought we sent Shane away too soon. Lots of people who thought we didn't send him soon enough. So you have to make your own decisions. That's what I would say, I guess.
Right.
Bernice, that's fascinating to me. And so when I was 12 years old, we had Moose Jaw Warriors season tickets. And they had a player by the name of Rob Reimer. He's a pastor now in Regina. And his billet family was moving. And so our family was approached to take him in. And so he lived with us for his last year and a half with the Warriors. And that was just a really rich time. But I remember he was seeking out very specific, I guess asking a lot of questions, making sure it was a really good fit to whatever billet family. And you talk about, I can't remember his name, but it might have been the general manager or president at Kamloops or whatever. But you hit on something like asking really good questions about where your son or daughter is going and being very clear and not being afraid to ask very concise questions on a variety of topics. And so I have people ask me, like I played baseball in the States for 5.5 years. And I had people come up to me and ask, well, like, what do we do? Like my son or daughter's being recruited to go away from home. And so many families just blindly send we're just going to, well, they say yes and they go. And then more often than not, they have a terrible experience because they weren't clear on where they were sending there. So, can you speak to that, like the billet family or just the situation, whatever organization you're sending to, just being really, really clear and asking clarifying questions so that you're comfortable in the situation you're sending them to?
I think that's huge especially because children, how old are we before we're really developed and have made, start to make decisions on our own? We're really affected by the people that we're around. And if they're going to be living in a home, it's important for the home not only to know what kind of your expectations would be if they were still at home, but also what are their expectations of your children. Do they have, are they willing to abide by the curfews that, Shane had a curfew always. And if it had been a home that was willing to kind of cover up for him if he wasn't in on that would be wrong in our opinion, because that's part of what we would have been teaching him. So we want him to see the same things. So asking lots of questions. And I think don't just take the first thing that comes along, like somebody comes along and, we had a guy approach us about being Shane's agent when he was 16. And we said no. Turned out he did become his agent later on. But, and they thought we were crazy because we said no, because we didn't, maybe because Bernie had been through hockey and my brothers had been through hockey. And, you get fed a lot of starry, glamorous thoughts. Be realistic. And, you probably do know whether or not your children can handle being away from home. I personally, to be honest, and I would say Shane said this, or Bernie would say this too, we never thought about Shane playing in the NHL, even when he went to Kamloops. That was not our biggest kind of slap in the face to make us realize, whoa, was he won the MVP at the Memorial Cup. And Bernie said he remembers when I was going to do this, he said, I remember sitting there thinking, God, what are you doing? You just threw him into a limelight that we were not expecting at all. And so don't be too quick to just take the first thing that comes along. Is, I guess, what I would suggest.
Well, one of my questions was going to be that, how, tell us, did you ever have an idea that he was going to make it? But you kind of just answered that. So it was that Memorial Cup and the MVP, and there's obviously a lot of scouts and things in that stage. And it sounds like his year of junior B at Killam didn't kill him, didn't kill his career. So it's
he actually it was hard on him because he was embarrassed because he had to wear a cage. And nobody else had to wear a cage. And some guy came up to him at the All-Star game, he got to play, and they go, you shouldn't be here. I don't think you like, he meant he was too good to be, he shouldn't be playing junior B. We were laughing because he was, had just turned 16 years old, but, or 15, I guess that year. One of the things I was going to say to you, with younger children, one of the things that Bernie always points out is, when he was playing hockey, and he could tell you his whole story, but he really had a major decision to make and walked away from hockey because he felt that it was no longer what he felt God wanted him to do. And he didn't have the joy and the enjoyment. And he said he gave it up and never, that was kind of where it was going. And he said, and then a few years later, I turned around and here was this 2-year-old running around behind me with a wooden spoon, batting a puck and a ball into every corner that he could. And so you kind of go, oh, I guess that's what they like, and then and then we went on and had, more children. And you were talking about my son, who's the largest one. He's almost 6'7". And he went through when he was playing hockey, he ended up getting really sick and couldn't play anymore and chose basketball. But when it came time to go to college, he said, I know I'm not going to make a living doing this. Should I spend all this money to do something that I don't need at college? If he'd have been going to go to college and get something. So he instead chose to become an electrician and played men's basketball. And whereas Leanne, she wanted to be a teacher, and but she also knew this was a road to get there. So along the way, there's so many different things that happen that starting when they're little, you kind of have to trust them to the Lord a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, developing character at a young age is something that we oftentimes talk about on the Grit and Growth podcast. We know that sport can help shape a young athlete. And at the same time, both Shane and I, I've read a book numerous times called Inside Out Coaching by Joe Ehrman. And he talks about the greatest myth in North America today is that sports develop character. And he says that they should, and that they have the opportunity to do it. But it's only when you have a coach who embodies character and uses sport with intentionality to develop character that sport actually develops character. Otherwise, we might experience things like maybe what you said your brothers learned and such in sport that could have stuck onto them for a longer term.
Mhm.
And so I just think I look at that and go, we believe sport has a huge power and a huge potential to shape a young athlete. And but it really matters, who's leading them along the way. And Bernie had the great opportunity to coach Shane quite a bit. I think
Yes.
not only
Yeah.
in the barn and around the house, but on the ice as well. And so
Yes.
that was meaningful. And I'm sure throughout Shane's career and your children's career, they had coaches that they would speak highly of as well, that influenced their lives positively too.
For sure. One of the things that Shane was given when he went to Kamloops for the first year was from a friend of ours who was a really good coach and a good friend of Bernie's, was a cassette tape. So it tells you how long ago it was. But it was of John Wooden, who
Yeah.
Shane listened to that almost every night. He'd put it in, and one of the things that I appreciated learning about John Wooden is how he paid so much individual attention to individual players, that it wasn't all about the game. It was about the players, and they learned character. And we feel very strongly. I have a favorite book called Character Matters, and I think the guy's last name is Rutland, and he lists integrity, humility, honesty, and our motto as a family, our scripture that our kids could quote, whatever you do it heartily as unto the Lord and not unto man. And when you stop and realize you have a greater purpose, even in sports, and you get a coach who works with the boys and the girls that way. I do have a hard time sometimes when I hear that my 12-year-old grandson has to listen to all the horrible language and get yelled at, and I'm thinking, first of all, it's not the NHL. You're not getting paid to do this. I disagree from that perspective. But you are shaping the lives of these children, and I admire having you guys come from the academy and came to the ranch, and we're doing team building, and what you were saying, Shane, the things that you're wanting to see for your children, that will make such a difference in your children's lives. I don't think you'll see the results, because I think when we first met you, Justin, you had just had your first child, and you will
Yeah.
you'll get to see those results. That our greatest joy, the scripture that says to see that your children walk in truth, and every one of our kids would say the same thing. That's what their dad talks about all the time, is the truth. In fact, this morning he's driving a school bus, and he made a sign that he stuck up on the door of the school bus. So I don't know if that's allowed, but he did. It said, "The truth will set you free." And what he does that, and then the kids ask him, "What is that?" And he gets to tell them. So that's the kind of coach and parent that you want. And I would say that as parents, be willing to talk to those coaches. I know that's not very popular, not to bawl them out and not to tell them what you think and tell them you want your kid to have more ice time, but ask them, what do you think? What is your philosophy in life? Are you willing to teach them qualities that will make them a better person? Because I do think that sports does make you develop you to learn how to win, learn how to lose, learn how to get along with other people who have no similar background to you. That's impressive if you can put together, and now in professional sports from all the countries around the world, that's huge.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Grit and Growth podcast. We hope that you enjoyed today's guest and the answers that they were able to give and the stories they were able to tell. If you did enjoy today's episode, we'd ask that you would just follow or subscribe to our podcast. It does help us get the word out in our message. Thanks again. Have a great day.